Hey, BTB buddies, I get excited when I find a new independent podcast. I don't know how I'm going to have time to listen to all these podcasts, but I'm going to. Independent podcasts are where it's at. I just found a good one. The Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker. That's right. The Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker is Matt, Greg, and Brendan. They talk about all things pop culture and have some great clients. Their clients are actually their guests. No, that's not right. Their clients are the topics they throw at their guests. Just take a look. They have great guests and great topics. It's actually like the BTB Internet Talk Show that I know you love, except for, well, it's entertaining. Matt, Greg, and Brendan are a real trip, and you can count on the conversation going down some wild and wacky rabbit holes. Their interviews are unique, and I'm sure their guests leave the show saying, what the hell just happened to me? And that's what you want from a podcast. I know that makes you want to check them out, so make sure you do. Check out the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker on all the podcast apps and their YouTube channel, and head over to QSB law.org to hit them up on social media. It's the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker, and let me tell you, it's a good one. Hey, BTB buddies, we're sponsored by Paper and Pencil Gamers. I remember those great old puzzle books my parents used to bring home. I love those. They had word searches, mazes, math puzzles, just all kinds of great stuff. Those were a lot of fun and could be done anywhere with just a book and a pencil, because that's all we had back then. Would you like activities that allow you and your children to unplug completely and solve some old school puzzles? Paper and Pencil Gamers has some great family-friendly puzzle books. These are educational and will take you off your devices for a while. We could all use that, couldn't we? You can read these books everywhere, even outside. They have a new book, 75 Hen Mazes, Book 1, Chicken, Poultry, Puzzles, and Solution. It's really cool. It's got a bunch of different chickens that are mazes, and you have to get to the other side. A lot of fun to have with your kids. Check out pencilandpapergamer.com. That's pencilandpapergamer.com. Or click the link in the show notes to take a look at all their great offline books that will encourage imagination and take you and your children on a journey without devices. And let them know Scott sent you. Hey, BTB buddies, Smile Brilliant is a sponsor of this episode, and you can use the word BITS, B-I-T-S, at checkout to get 30% off your order. Do you grind your teeth at night? Well, you're among a group of 40 million people who do. If you do, you probably know it's not all that good for them. You also probably don't want to pay $200 to $300 for a night guard from the dentist and then grind through several of those guards per year. Smile Brilliant has the same custom-fitted night guards for as little as $45. How do they do it? Smile Brilliant has their own lab, and you can buy direct and not pay all those extra dental fees. You can also get custom-fitted teeth whitening trays and the Carry Pro electric toothbrush from Smile Brilliant. Head over to Smile Brilliant, and when you check out, use the code BITS, B-I-T-S, to get 30% off your purchase. That's right. Go to smilebrilliant.com and enter the code BITS, B-I-T-S, when you check out for 30% off your purchase. Now, that's a good deal. My guest today is somebody who grew up in Texas and spent a good deal of his formative comedy years in New York. Now he's in L.A., moved in and ready to go and take on the post-COVID world. He's appeared on so many shows and channels on SiriusXM, I can't even list them all. He's been like on everything, every channel. He's a TV writer. He's an actor. He's got the only comedy album titled The Zoom Comedy Album 2020. It's Dustin Chafin. Justin,
what's up, buddy?
How are you? Dustin. I said Justin, didn't I?
Yeah, it just drives me crazy. I always do that at Starbucks. I always put Justin on there.
Wow.
I think we're just so conditioned to think about Bieber and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Just think Justin automatic.
So, Dustin, okay, I'll be good for the rest of the interview. I really appreciate you coming on because you are doing some stuff that a lot of people aren't doing, and you leaned into some stuff during the pandemic that some people didn't. So you've got the album out called the Zoom album 2020, and it's a Zoom album. It's you doing Zoom shows. And I want to get into that first because this is something that you either get or you don't get as far as Zoom's concerned. And I want to hear about your experience, because obviously you were quarantined. You were in New York at the time, and they had a pretty big lockdown compared even to the rest of the country when it first came about. So you were just inside, and you started doing these shows. So tell me how that evolved for you.
Yeah, so it's happy to be here. Very cool. The Zoom thing was interesting because it was like we were all like freaking out. Nobody knew how long this was going to last. It could have been a month. It could be ended up being so much longer, a year or whatever. I think my brain was just like twirling around. I got to figure things out. My first show was an Instagram show, and it was horrible. Everybody said they liked it or whatever. When you just hate yourself when you're doing comedy, and it was just like, and it's weird with an Instagram format because you can't hear them at all. Yeah. And so you're just like, you're getting heckled by emojis. You know? And you're just like, and I'm nearsighted, so I'm squinting, trying to see if a woman in a red dress, is that a heckle or is that a good thing? And just a horrible, weird kind of experience to do your comedy in this way. And so I just kept doing them over and started finding a little bit of rhythm. And then I realized the bar was so low that I could, like, who cares how you do? Yeah. Like, I got over that really quick. I was just like, these guys were just like getting weird that they didn't crush on Zoom. It's like, dude, seriously, take it down. Yeah. And it's a place to do new shit because it's if you bomb, whatever, and there's nobody in the back of the room watching you. Like it's just, and so I had a good attitude about new material. And so I forced myself. I was like, you know what? I'm going to just do, every time I have a Zoom show, maybe I'd have 3 a week. I would write a new set for every single show. So I was really pumping out new stuff. And it was, and a lot of it was pandemic stuff, but a lot of it wasn't. A lot of it was stuff I was afraid to tell in a club because I felt like in comedy clubs, it's like sometimes you can't really do what you always want to do. If you're at Crackers in Indiana, you can't really tell this heartfelt story about your dad. They want you to be funny in 2 seconds. You got to pop and you got to work the room and you got to, if you want to play there again. Yeah. And so there's a lot of those things weren't there with the Zoom element. Yeah. So I just was able to put this thing together. And so the more spots I did, I realized, you know what? I think it'd be cool if I could record an album, and if I could get it on SiriusXM, then I could make some money that I'm missing from being on the road. Right. So that if I could and if this thing sounds good enough that they can air it, then I could be in rotation and then make a little cash and then it'll do this thing. So that was my creative way to figure out how to survive the comedy world. And so we put it together. My label's Comedy Records, and my first album, Stop Telling People That, they did, and it was a really good experience. And I told them, I said, I'm doing this Zoom thing. And they were like, they were like, what's that going to sound like? And so nobody really thought the audio was going to be good enough. And it was a very bizarre thing. So we filmed 2 shows and we did the Zoom thing. And originally it was like, I wasn't sure if I was going to do a special or if I was going to just do an album. But I set it up in a way that I could be as comfortable as possible. And I was such a weirdo. I was actually in Maine. My girl lives in Maine, and her family lives there. And so we went there for 2 months in the summer. And so that's where I actually recorded it. And her mom has mannequin heads everywhere. And so it's like terrifying. They like have wigs and like hats. And you like turn a corner, you're like, Jesus. And you're like, it's always, so I was like, how funny would it be if while I'm doing this Zoom show, I just put all these mannequin heads in the front. So it looks, so they see heads. And then when I look, I see that. And it was amazing how comfortable it made me.
I wondered where you came up with that, because I saw some of that. And what I was thinking was, this is perfect. You're looking at the mannequin heads and you can have your notes pasted on front of them.
They're definitely cheat sheets. I had like just poster boards everywhere because it was all new material. It was stuff that wasn't worked out. My first album was 10 years in comedy. Yeah, this was a whole different thing. Yeah, so the cheat sheets, but it was so funny. I put the heads there, and of course they were all wearing masks and social responsible, and it was just funny. I did crowd work with them, but it was like a way to feel natural. And I stood on a stool and played with the mannequins. So it was a good experience.
Right. Crowd work in Zoom is actually, I actually feel like it's necessary because you actually develop you don't have to call on everybody, but you actually develop a little bit more rapport, and people seem to listen a little bit better if you make fun of a few people. If somebody's got their cat peeking around the corner or a weird piece of art or something like that, you can really key on that. I did have a backfire one time on me, though. One guy just didn't want to talk to me. I'm like, come on, turn your mic on. I want to talk. And he would not do it.
Yeah, it's definitely bizarre, but that is the kind of stuff that helps you connect to the audience. So it's like anything that's going to make you, because you can't feel the connection from the crowd. So something like crowd work is you get talking to them and get more conversational. But I had a great experience with it, and I think it's my best. It's better than my other album in the sense that there was a lot of stories. Like I was saying before, sometimes you don't do the stuff you always want to do in a club. A comic said to me one time, it was hard to hear. It was actually Vic Henley, who passed and recently in the beginning of January, and great comic, a good dude. And he told me one time, he said, look, man, he goes, I don't mean anything by this, but you are more interesting than your act. And he was just like, it was one of those things, because I was just that guy doing midget jokes and weed jokes, and I was always killing, but it wasn't like a lot coming from my life. And so when I did this Zoom thing, I was like, just go all in, tell some stories, talk about your life, talk about growing up, your dad had a strip club, talk about it's your crazy brothers pretending to go to college for 2 years and taking money from your parents. And I had so many crazy, my dad getting arrested on a family vacation, and just crazy stories that it was like I was just sitting on because I was a pussy and didn't want to tell them in a club. And it was just like, dude, just do it. And who cares that you can delete this Zoom? Nobody has to pretend. Only the 40 people that were there know you did it. So it was like a really good experience. And so I did the stories. I did a lot of newer stuff about COVID and whatnot. And I was really happy with it. It really kind of came together. And then Anthony Caffer, who's a producer that worked on my first album, he's a comic, but he's a sound guy. He's a musician. He's a really good ear for the sound quality. And so we hammered this thing out. We worked on it. We made the laughs not sound so zoomy. And we sweetened it and made it like crisp, and it turned out well. I got it on SiriusXM. It's on Raw Dog, and that was the goal. Yeah. And so it was, it was a win for me. It was like probably the hardest thing I've ever done in comedy. And because it was just, because the elements are so, nobody was used to it. So it was like one of those things where, I was experimenting the entire time. But a lot of comics, they shit on just Zoom shows and all that stuff. But for me, it was great. It was like, because what else am I going to do? Right. You know? My girl wrote a book. I'm not as smart as she is. Yeah. And so I had to do something. Right. This was my way of being creative in this weird, bad situation. And it ended up being a really good silver lining for me. Because how a lot of comics I was one of those guys, and I'm not going to rank on them too much, but it's those guys that just do the same act for forever. And it's your bread and butter. You crush with it. You got your closer, you got your opener, you know what you're doing. You got your kind of crowd work that's standard stock. You become one of those guys. You play a lot of firehouses and a lot of just private events or whatever. And I felt like I wasn't growing. And so this forced me to do new material, grow, and just take risks. Because you see all these, guys that are successful, Bill Burrs and guys like that, they just pump out a new hour and they don't fret about it. They just do it. Yeah. And a lot of times they're writing some of it on stage and all that stuff. And so I just it was my way of growing up a little bit in comedy and doing something different. And I'm very proud of it and just happy it came out. So get the album, guys.
It's funny. I listened to both albums back to back, and I did it mostly while I was driving. And what you said about the second one being better, it's funny because when I started comedy late, but when I started, you were one of them that I watched because it felt like you were in a bar just talking to a bunch of friends. That's what your act felt like to me. It was very natural and it just hit me as something that was better than what I could do. So I studied that, and yet when I see it up against the 2020 and the stories and getting personal and those types of things, I do feel like you're right. You did grow. You become somebody who is actually reflecting on a life that's been pretty crazy lived, rather than just observations on different types of people. So I felt like even though it's in a Zoom setting, I felt like it was really a tour de force storytelling type thing.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks for listening to it. A lot of times I do podcasts, but nobody listens to the stuff. And you're just like, really, dude? Thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate that. That means a lot. It really does.
A few days ago, I had Art Bell on, and he started Comedy Central, and he's been doing a lot of podcasts, but I watched and listened to a few of them. Most of the people didn't read his book, and I stayed up 3 nights in a row to read his book. And I'm like, I know what I'm going to ask. And afterwards he said, thank you for reading the book, because this so really cool. Sucks if you don't do your research. But yeah, I always felt like you were just one. I like the Texas mentality, and I grew up on the edge of poor in a small town, and I get where you're coming from, the whole double wide and all that kind of stuff. And it's just really neat that you came from that and went into comedy. And some of the stuff you say and get away with, I think you're probably the only one that could get away with it. There's definitely some material that was a little edgy for some and that's the thing is that's what keeps me excited about comedy is getting away with stuff on stage and pushing it a little bit, taking it back. And my early stuff was a little more aggressive with race and things like that. And being in New York and being this fish out of water and kind of this edge to being that and the way people perceive you. And then people always talking about certain projects and neighborhoods were rough. And I always felt like, what rough is. The freaking trailer park is rough. I don't care about your, they always try to make white people soft. I was like, okay. Yeah. It's like, Indiana, you know what I'm talking about. It's like, and so it's just things like Alabama, you're going to see all that. But I felt like that was me trying to get rid of that kind of privileged white guy thing that everybody would make reference to in New York. And so that was my angle. And also being part Native American, I felt, talk about a race that doesn't get respect. Yeah. And so the race that really should. There's no national holiday. There's no. It's just we barely got off a football helmet. Yeah. So it's like that was my angle. With the first thing was first early work was like those two kind of mentalities was Texas and Native and stuff. But then this time it was like I try to keep it more about myself and my own experiences. So it's been a lot of fun. So let's talk about your early years were pretty unconventional. And I think that's what goes into your comedy. You did some stuff before you did comedy and then you went into comedy. What was it that put you in to stand up?
Yeah, I got a weird story. My whole thing was
hard to find some of your story, too. You got a bio, but it's pretty short. It's just what you did, but I had to really dig to find some of it.
Yeah, sometimes I don't like to put too much in a bio because I feel like I want to do that on stage. Yeah. So I've had the real long bios of my life. And then I was like, you know what? I like being a mystery. And then people like hear my album or whatever. Yeah. It's I don't know. Sometimes well, if your bio's 2 pages on your website, I think that's a little much. Yeah. Like I'll write a book one day. I don't want my book to be on my website. Yeah. Oh, I didn't know this happened. It's like save a little for mystery.
Right. No doubt.
But yeah, I was growing up in Texas. I was a weirdo, and I became a Mormon in high school with this Mormon girl, and we hit it off and things, and we broke up. And I think to spite her, I became a missionary and went and tried to get her back. Or whatever. Ended up going to South America and Chile for 2 years, and then I came back, went to BYU for a little while, and tried to figure out what I wanted to do. And I always had this thing where I always had this dream in New York. I wanted to be like this fashion designer or something, little artist. I didn't really know. I didn't know what that was. I was like, fashion design. You just draw dresses and hang out with models. Like I had no idea you had to learn how to sew and shit like that.
Are you a Project Runway guy?
Not really, but when I was at that age in life, I wanted to just be this rock star artist. Yeah. I didn't know what it was. Like I said, I just didn't know. I just knew I had to get to New York. Yeah. And
I never missed Project Runway, and my wife and I, it's part of my act actually, but my wife and I, we sit there and we watch it together. I love Tim Gunn, so anything he's doing other shows now that aren't Project Runway, but I watch those too. I just think he's the coolest.
Yeah, I ended up going to Park Parsons. I got accepted into Parsons. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
And I studied fashion and stuff, and I thought that's what I was going to do. But then I just leaned towards the fine arts because I ended up finding comedy because I was a busboy to the New York Comedy Club.
Okay.
And so I ended up kind of meeting some friends, and a girlfriend of mine, it was a Mormon girl. She was friends with this guy at a hotel named Pete Cordielli, and he was a young comic starting out, and then he was at the New York Comedy Club as a busboy, and he kind of got me in. And I'd done stand-up comedy at BYU once, and I got a standing ovation. And it was like I've been chasing the dragon. It's like one of those weird things where like most people's first set is horrible. Mine was amazing. So I was like, I'm only at about 6 of those, and I'm like, come on. So then I came to New York, and it was like I said, I was in Parsons, and then I was a busboy, and then I started finding the comedy bug, and just started. New York Comedy Club was great because I was a busboy, and so I was able to meet all these comics, and I was always at the club, and so Mark Maron and Todd Barry and DC Benny and Ben Bailey and Judah Friedlander, all these guys became friendly with me, and they were supportive, and then I just started running shows. I was like for so long, I was the producer in New York, and I ran a lot of important venues like Boston Comedy Club. That was a place that I felt was spawned. Probably the best comics currently working, I feel, came out of the Boston Comedy Club in New York City. I feel Patrice O'Neill and Chappelle and all those guys. And so I started running shows, and that's how I got stage time. I was just like, because I hated open mics. Open mics were just like horrible to me. You just get up there and
they suck
nobody's
so
paying
bad.
Attention.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes there'll be some open mics where people supportive and stuff. But now it's even worse because when we started, they didn't have phones.
Yeah.
So they're just writing on their shit.
Yeah.
So now they're just like, man, they have fucking smartphones. Maybe a flip phone. Nobody was doing much with that.
Yeah.
But so I've been running clubs, and through that, I've able to help a lot of comedians that a lot of people know, and the Nate Bargatzes and Pete Holmes and people like that who came through me, and I was able to create a scene. And so I worked with Al Martin for years, and we opened up the Greenwich Village Comedy Club on Madougall, and who knew we could open up a club right next door to the Cellar and it would be successful. And but we pulled it off. We were there for 8 years, and it was great. And I always compare it to like the CBGBs of the Cellar was kind of the hard rock cafe, and we're the CBGBs, you know. It was just like this raw kind of, I never cared if anybody bombed. I was like, just go be a comic, like, find it, dude, because I'm a comic. And so I always felt like it's rare when you have places that are ran by people that, you know how to do this art form. And sometimes you'll have an occasional owner that MCs, and we all know how that goes. But you're like, really? Dude, he's like, they'll do like another 20 minutes. You're like, you're killing me. Like, just get off stage. But that was how I started doing comedy, and just started getting a little bit of TV and working and kind of meeting people. And everything I've ever got in comedy is because a comedian thought I was funny. And so my path has always been through comics saying, hey, Chafin's funny, da-da-da, and that kind of. So I climbed the ladder through friends and comedians and people that, liked my comedy. And so that's how I've done it. And now I'm done with kind of running shows in New York, and my girl and I am working on a script about a famous comedian. I got to be a little vague about it, but we're working on stuff here, and she's coming out here to work. And we said, LA, why not? It's the land where everybody's 22. We're like, who cares? We're still gonna come out here and get some Botox and see what happens. Get some just for men, see what we can do. But so now we're in LA, but that's where I'm at now. But
things about you, and it's funny, I talked about this in a recent interview. There's very few comics that can get away with playing to the back of the room and also make the front of the room laugh. And because I think you melded with the comics because you're putting on the shows, you do play to the back of the room because the comics laugh at your stuff. And it's hard to make a comic laugh. We both know that. But yet you make the crowd laugh too. That's got to be a pretty good feeling.
Yeah. Where have you seen me? Can I ask what our history?
I've never seen you live, but I just did the whole I did the whole YouTube thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if like I missed you at Crackers or somewhere. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's been a YouTube deep dive.
Cool. Yeah, I feel what's interesting though is because I always crap on comics because I feel like there's a lot of good comics that we know that are our friends, and then there's those that were just like, ugh, do you really have to be in this? But what I've noticed though is as much as I crap on comics, they show up.
Yeah.
And they support you.
Yeah.
And they listen to your podcast and they go to your album recordings and they do. And so it's especially with the Zoom thing, a lot of the audience was comedians.
Yeah.
And so a lot of guys that showed up were like, yo, we respect what you're doing or whatever. So they showed up. It felt like a back of the room kind of show.
Yeah.
And a lot of it we cut because I'm like trash in the industry and I'm not going too far, trying to play to the back of the room.
Yeah.
And it was just like that freaking guy. And like, so I had to cut a few names, but because I was glad I didn't go live. I'm a bit of a bridge burner. I think that's why.
Oh man, I dig that. Yeah, I'm the same.
I've heard a lot of bridges.
Yeah.
Foot in the mouth kind of thing. But I don't drink anymore. That helps a lot.
Yeah. You've been at it for a while. Did you ever get to work with Tim Wilson?
Tim Wilson. Sounds familiar. I don't know.
He passed away. He was really big in the Midwest. He was on Bob and Tom a lot and stuff like that. But he was a back of the room guy. And I just talked to Corey Ryan Forrester just a couple episodes ago, and he worked with Tim Wilson quite a bit coming up, and just talked about him being the only guy who he knew that could do the back of the room stuff and still make the crowd laugh too. But yeah, we lost him. 5 or 6 years ago. So yeah, he was good. He was good. If you ever want to study somebody that didn't give a shit about what the audience thought, that was him. So
that'd be great. No, one thing about the back of the room too is New York comedy is during the week it can be rough. A lot of times you might have 6 people, you might have 4 people. One time I did a show at Dangerfield and it was like 2 girls in the crowd, and during the middle of my act, they went to go to the bathroom while I was on stage. I was literally on stage with nobody. Yeah. I had to wait for them to come back. So the fact that the crowds are so small sometimes is like a lot of times comics will be your audience. Yeah. And so I got used to like, okay, these guys are stage left. I need laughs because I'm a whore. And so I'm going to play to everybody in the room. And so I think that's how I came up. I just felt I'm playing everybody here. It's like these 2 people are from the Midwest. These people are over here, 2 Asian dudes, the 2 comics in the back. Like I'm going to play everything I can. Yeah. And so that's how we came up in New York.
Yeah. Now, you and your girl have been together for quite a while, and she's a comic too. What's it like to have 2 comics in the house?
Let's just say every fight ends with I'm going to use that, but that's mine. No, that's mine. I'm taking it. She has the boobs, so she usually gets the bit. Yeah, but we've really worked hard because we've been together a long time, about I think 15 years coming up, and that's like 50 years in comedy years. Yeah, and big time for 2 comics to stay together. But we learned early on. I made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, trying to be too coupley in the stand-up world, and there's a lot of comedy couples that do it well. Yeah, there's Bonnie and it's Tom Cotter and Carrie Louise. There's people that do it well, and it's their thing. They're established as couples. We separate ourselves a little bit. Like we have a Patreon thing that we do that we started in the pandemic, but if you want to see us do something, you got to pay for it. Yeah, otherwise we're going to be very on our own. So that has helped our relationship, that we're not like in shadows of each other. We don't put it in too many people's faces. We have our own identity instead of a comedy couple identity. But that's what helps us stay together.
Hey, BTB buddies, I'm excited to have Bragg Apple Cider Vinegar as a sponsor of the show. They've been making ACV, that's what us cool kids call apple cider vinegar, since 1912. My grandparents, my parents, and now I always have Bragg ACV in the fridge. I always use Bragg ACV to make my favorite tahini dressing that I use on wraps and salads and as a dip for my apples. It's delicious and it's healthy. Oh, would you like the recipe? I guess I can give it to you. Okay, here it is. 3 tablespoons of tahini, 2 tablespoons of maple syrup, 1 teaspoon of Dijon mustard, 1 teaspoon of Bragg ACV, a pinch of garlic powder, and lots of freshly ground pepper. Mix it all together and add a little bit of water if you want to thin it out for a salad. I normally double or triple the recipe, so I always have some on hand because I love it that much. Anyway, Bragg is jumping into the 21st century with some new products. ACV has some amazing health benefits when used regularly, like improved digestion, lowered blood pressure, and healthier skin. Bragg ACV has made it easier than ever to incorporate apple cider vinegar into your daily routine with perfectly measured prebiotic ACV shots in 4 delicious flavors, including honey, pineapple cayenne, carrot ginger, and ginger turmeric. I can't think of an easier way to get all the great health benefits of ACV than drinking one of these great tasting ACV shots every morning. All of these Bragg products contain perfectly measured 1 tablespoon of ACV, 750 milligrams of acetic acid, and are USDA organic and non-GMO. Go to www.bragg.com and use my code BITS15 for 15% off your first order. That's bragg.com, BRAGG.com, and the code BITS15 for 15% off your first order. It's good stuff. Do you go like different directions when you do tour and go to different clubs, or do you go to the 2 clubs in the same city?
No, I mean, we will, damn it, at this point. We'll take anything.
Yeah.
All that goes out the window, we'll be, But no, we toured a lot in the beginning. She opened for me a lot in the beginning. And then I just felt once she started getting more of a veteran that we just started doing our own thing. But we did a lot of USO tours together and things like that. Yeah. We were in Iraq and, Kuwait and stuff. So we did all that fun stuff together. So we had a lot of that experience together. But yeah, we just kind of just do our own thing, and we're both headliners, so nobody's wants to open for either one. So so we usually, unless it's a co-headliner thing or something.
Yeah, I think Rich usually opens for Bonnie, though. Because I know they go together most of the time, but I think Bonnie wins.
Well, Rich is a hard follow, man. When he's on with his crowd work, I don't want to follow him. He's
great. I absolutely love him.
Can I tell you? I have to tell you a funny thing about if you love Rich Voss. So I did this. I put together this pilot thing. It was called Hijack Comedy, and the idea behind it was that we took comedians and we blindfolded them and put them in a van, and then we drove them to gigs that they didn't know what the gig was going to be. So we took Joe DeRosa, we blindfolded him, put him on I had a friend who was security at a comedy club. He was also a New York City bus driver. And so he drove a bus. And so we planted all these people, and then DeRosa took off his mask and said he's on a bus and he's got to do stand up. He's got a mic stand, that kind of thing. And so we did this thing with Rich Voss where I was like, I don't know if you Bob DeBono.
I know that name. Yeah.
Yeah. He does like the Trump stuff. He's he's a really incredible impressionist. Yeah. And so he does a great Rich Voss impression. And so he sounds just like him. Like he's been on Jim Breuer's show and all that stuff. He sounds just like. And so what I did is I told Rich, I said, look, Rich, I'm filming this thing. I want you for the pilot. So here's what you're going to do. I want you to send me 7 minutes. Just give me a clip of whatever 7 minutes you want to do. But you have to do that 7 minutes again live on a show. So he goes, okay. So he sent me the 7 minutes. And then I sent it to Bob DeBono. I said, all right, I want you to do this 7 minutes. And so Bob gets up on stage in the perfect Rich Voss. I can't do the story justice because I can't do impressions of Rich. He's like, however he talks, whatever. So he did word for word. He did like Rich Voss's intonations, delivery, and he did this 7 minute set. And Rich Voss is upstairs. He has no idea what's happening. He just knows he's on next. And so Rich Voss goes down, and we're at the Broadway Comedy Club, and it's like upstairs, downstairs. So he goes downstairs, he gets on stage, it's all tourists, and he gets on stage, and he just opens the exact same way in the same exact voice as the guy right before. And then he does another joke, same exact joke, in the same exact voice. And he's bombing miserably. And he can't do crowd work because that's the rule. It's like you can't go off your script. You gotta he lasted about 3 minutes and he's like, fuck this. And he just went off and he's like, what's happening right now? And he was like yelling at the crowd, and it was just the funniest moment to see somebody not know why they're bombing.
Yeah.
And just, they have no clue. Usually when we bomb, we have an idea. We don't feel good or the crowd sucks.
Yeah.
He had no idea. And it was so funny.
That's great. That's great.
It was a fun idea.
Yeah. And Opie and Anthony used to pull so many tricks on him. It was just sad. But yeah, it was thinking about, okay, you get into comedy and you're doing that, but now you are going into all kinds of other stuff. So you're getting into acting. You did that episode of Crashing, and you're writing and all that kind of stuff. And the funny thing is, I can tell by following your Facebook is that you're a big fan of the visual arts, and yet you are totally getting into the more literate stuff and the writing and stuff like that. How is that working for you?
Yeah, I'm a Renaissance man, if you will. I love all kinds of art. I think I could have done any sort of art. That I have a lot of kind of knack for a lot of things, and drawing and painting and writing and performing and things. And so I love it all. And that one thing I really I still do love about stand-up is it has a whole lot of facets to it. A lot of different parts of art. You're a writer, you're a director, you're the star. Like you can dress the way you want to dress. You can brand yourself. You can be a character. Yeah. So I think that's why I was drawn to stand up, because somebody that's all over the place as an artist, it has a lot to offer for somebody like me who's very ADD with their art.
Yeah.
So, but I've enjoyed doing different things, and the Crashing thing was incredible. It was I think that's the one time I felt like I had arrived, is because I got to play myself. And when I was a kid, we used to, this show, The Love Boat.
Yep.
So the people would just show up and they'd just be themselves. Like Charo would be like herself. Yeah. So I felt like I got to just be myself. Dustin Chafin, the comedian.
Yeah.
And the credit was Dustin Chafin as Dustin Chafin. And I don't know, it was just a funny, kooky. If you have any sort of 70s TV, that's as himself. Like they always did that on like Dukes of Hazzard or somebody. Willie Nelson is,
Yeah.
But so I've enjoyed the ride, and I'm enjoying it still. And this second half is going to be just as fun. I'm really excited to see where it takes me. And that's in comedy is one of those beautiful things where you just have to strap in. You have no idea where you're going to end up, who you're going to meet, what you're going to do. And that's the beauty of it. It's rock and roll, and it's a beautiful thing. So you have the best name for a podcast that I have ever heard, and I wish I would have thought of it. I'll leave you with this. Talk about how that started and what you're doing with it. Yeah. It's funny because comedians most of the comedians in their set would, okay, I'll leave you with this. And so it's come from that, that. And so I felt there's like that game, 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. Yeah. I feel in stand-up comedy, there's a 6 Degrees of Dustin Chafin. I feel like a lot of comics can source back to me. And so having all that access to comedians, I felt like it was time for me to start a podcast where, similar to what you're doing, just getting into minds of comedians and finding their journey. And I work with a lot of young comics and stuff and coach and things like that. And so I knew it was good for them to hear these stories and from comedians that are well known and stuff. And so I just started, and I'm a big Charlie Rose fan. I don't care if he got busted or not. I thought he was a great interviewer. And so I love the one-on-one. Yeah. I've tried several podcasts with 4 guys and 2 guys and whatever. And it's always fun. I feel like you're always doing double dutch. You're trying to jump in. You're trying to be funny. You're trying to up the other guy. Yeah. And I really love the personal one-on-one interview as you do as well. And you just get a real conversation and you don't miss stuff. Somebody trying to roast somebody's shirt or something stupid. Yeah. You avoid all that. Yeah. And so I did it for a few years. It got picked up by Authentic Management, and it's still out there. And when the pandemic happened, the Zoom thing was just starting, and I know now the streaming stuff is great for podcasts. It really is amazing for podcasts. It allows you to have guests you would normally not have access to. Yeah. So another silver lining is this technology for podcasts. Because before I had to be like, okay, I'll meet you at the club, and I'll meet you at a studio, or you had to have a studio or a place to meet. And now this is amazing. Yeah. But so what I did was my girl and I, Leah Bonema, and she's an amazing comic, Colbert, all that good stuff. And we decided that we were going to take I'll Leave You With This, and I was just going to do a coupling version of it. And so it was like how these 2 comedians were dealing with the pandemic, how we were eating and shopping and cleaning all the time and going to Rite Aid as our only entertainment and doing all these like crazy things and being manic and not being on stage and learning how to not kill each other. And, and so I'll leave you with this. Move to a Patreon page for now. And eventually I would like to get it back and maybe do something a little more in depth because I enjoy talking to comedians and I know so many people. So I feel like it's a service to be able to bring these talents to people. And so, but I'm glad you like the name. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah. And I like the podcast too. I listened to some of the back episodes and it's a lot like what I do. So I when I was researching to do this podcast, I couldn't find very many that totally did away with the small talk. And that's what I wanted to do. Just cut to the chase right away. So it's all content and no bullshit. So I like how you do it. So what you were there early in career and got to see the chubby face Bargassi. And see him come up. Did you ever think that he would get like he is today?
Yeah, I did. I feel like,
and I usually don't talk about other comics with a comic, but you are close enough to him that I think I think it's worth it to talk about.
No, it is. He's my boy, and I take a lot of pride in discovering him before a lot of other people did. And he bombed a lot, and he was like a terrible barker, but he was this Southern guy. I was a Texas guy. I was like, I just fell in love with him, and he's one of those guys that like. He's so freaking likable. But even when he wouldn't do that great on stage, it's like he had something that was different. He had this endearing kind of simple kind of Tennessee kind of slow mentality, but owning it and not forcing it. Right. It wasn't like a blue collar thing. It was like the next evolution past that. Right. And that's the thing with Nate and I, we were always like, we always wanted to go a little further than the guys that were like, I'm Southern. We just wanted to be like, you know what? Yeah, we're from the South. We've done stuff and we're more like you than you think and more of a city mentality. So I saw that in him and I was the first to take him on the road. And we were in Iraq together as well and did a whole bunch of shows, different places and stuff. And it was interesting to see him, but he made good decisions. He chose to be clean, which was, a hard thing to do, playing these late shows in Manhattan. But he always had a vision, he always knew that he would stay with the stuff. But once he took a turn, because he was a bit guy, like he did bits about Superman and like things like that, and spaghetti, being Italian, eating spaghetti and different things. And it was funny, but I feel once he told his stories and started getting into that part of his life, he really blew up. And I talked to him last night. We did a thing together, and it was just like I interviewed him and stuff for some young comics. And I want to plug that too. If comics watch this, I'm doing a thing called Right Club.
That's next on my list. Yeah.
Yeah, great. And we can talk about that. But talking to him was great. And he just made a lot of, and the way he writes is very, I learned so much. I've known him forever. Yeah. And even interviewing him, I learned more than I did before I interviewed him. I was just like, the way he writes, he takes a bit and he doesn't work it out. He only writes the ending. Yeah. And so when he gets on stage, he just goes with it and see where it goes, but he knows where he's headed, but he just has this looseness to him. Yeah. That is so people connect to it and want to be a part of it. So it's been beautiful to watch it. And he paid his dues. He worked his ass off. It's not like he's one of these guys that got it when he was 15 because he was young or whatever. I got a few of those guys I could talk about on Saturday Night Live or whatever. I get movies because I got tattoos. Yeah. But Nate is really a guy that's...
I don't like him either.
but he's a guy that really... is just a great craftsman, a great comedian, and he really just is good at what he does. And you can't not listen to him. Yeah. Even if the stuff is not as funny as the other thing he said, you still love it because it's him.
His whole meter. The way he talks is so great. It's funny. His last tour, I saw him twice do the exact same show. And my wife and I went to Indy and watched him there, and we paid a lot for tickets for that one. And then he came to South Bend, and I'm like, I'll just go see it again. And we went to see him twice and saw the exact same show. And it's funny what's the same and what's different, because every once in a while he'll go around a joke a bit like what you say. The end's going to stay the same, but he's going to get there a little different way just to play with it. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's really the best way to do comedy. I always tell people too, your setup should be where you play. And you find different ways to go, and the punch should be solid, but everything else you can play around. You got time to play with the premise.
And don't let your ego take over and think you've written it the best way, because it's never the best way. Yeah,
you can always do better.
Yeah,
you can always get bored, you're doing the same shit over and over. So
so let's talk about Right 10, since you brought it up and it's on my list. It sounds like a pretty cool deal. What are you doing with that?
Yeah, club is basically, it's combining everything that I do. It's stand-up, podcasting, coaching, all that stuff. So I always feel like I hate comedy classes. I've taken a bunch of them when I first started out. I hate the idea of somebody like, here's comedy class. You got to take the joke, and comedy's in threes, and you got to do this. And it's always some, kind of structured thing. And you can get a lot out of comedy class. Sometimes what you get out of it is you might meet people that you end up being connected to for the rest of your career. Yeah. So there's a lot of good things that happen in comedy classes. But I just never wanted to teach one. I started coaching when I opened the club with Al and Greenwich, because I felt like there's a good opportunity, and I have a club, I could play around, whatever, and I could just put comics on stage. And so that was the thing, is like I felt unless I could get somebody on stage, I wasn't going to coach them. And I don't believe in the bringers and all that crap. I'm not a big fan of that. Yeah. So I wanted to be able to do that. So that's what I did with this. So now that I don't have a place to put people, I figured the way that I learned comedy was listening to people like Mark Maron and listening to Dave Attell and being be a fly on the wall when these guys would talk about things and comedy and hell gigs and how they got started and stuff. And so I figured, let's do something that's an actor studio for comedians. Mm-hmm. And so basically I do a Right Club thing where like Mondays we have a guest speaker. And the first one was Neighbor Gotzi. We have Dan Soder. We have Mike Brett. We have all these great comedians. And it's what it is like we just do the Q&A. We do a little Q&A at the end. They get to ask questions through me. And then I talk to the comedians. Basically like my podcast, but a live version with the young comics watching. And it's not aired anywhere else. I'm not putting it on YouTube or anything. It's just for that group of people. So it's a one-time thing. You get to embrace it. I'm not trying to put it somewhere and make it a whole thing. I'm just trying to make it about people learning from these great comics. Because to my thing, it's kind of being invited to like a veteran comedy table at a comedy club, where all the comics are around the table and you get to slide in there and they don't make fun of you. Right. And then twice a week we do it. And then on Thursdays we write. And it's not like I'm not teaching you how to write. We're just basically like it's comics. I pair people up and I give people a theme. Like this week, the theme was siblings. And if you don't have siblings, talk about being an only child. And so then everybody goes for the week and they work on that. And then then everybody brings their sibling jokes. And we all do a little open mic and we play around. And then also the second thing was bring a joke that doesn't work, but you think it's funny. And then, so it's that kind of stuff, a more advanced kind of comedy thing for people to just basically get better. Cause we're all rusty. I have a gig April 1st. I wouldn't have been on stage in almost 3 weeks, but I got Hyenas with TJ Miller and we're doing thing. And so it's hard to get stage time. So things like this help you work out the bit without having the stage time because you have other comedy minds and everybody working on it and stuff. So basically it's like that. It's just like a kind of a free-for-all for comedians to get better and enjoy each other and people to meet each other and to listen to some of the best comics in the world. Right.
Yeah. So, that sounds really cool. And you're just going to keep doing that, do like semesters?
It's going to be, it's like I have 3 for the year. So this first one just started. You can still sign up for that for March. And I'll do one in June and one in Write
That's cool.
So you can sign up for the whole year if you want. That kind of thing.
Yeah, that's really neat.
It's a fun way. Yeah, and if you guys want to do it, just email me at rightclubstandup@gmail.com.
Yeah, that's really a neat idea. And that's one of the cool things that's come from the pandemic is these types of things have come up. And there's other people doing it in different ways. And it's funny you talk about not liking comedy classes. I'm starting one tonight because I know the guy that's doing it, and I want to tighten up my writing and stuff like that. I want to be better. And
come to mine. You would love mine.
Yeah, yeah.
What we do is great. It's advanced too. Some guys have been doing it like 7 years and stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's not. It's all young guys.
Yeah. It sounds like a really neat idea. And I think it's cool that those things are popping up. And do you think that Zoom comedy is going to go completely away when restrictions are lifted?
I hope not, because I'm in LA and we don't get a lot of stage time out here. So.
Yeah.
I'm going to be like, no, guys, come on, man, log on. Everybody in New York is going to be like, sorry, man, we got 5 sets to do.
Yeah.
But, I really hope not. I think it's been a cool kind of medium for – what's great about it is I could be doing a Zoom show, and there'd be some people from, like, Africa and like, Indiana and, like, all over the world, Brazil. Yeah. And so I love that element of it. I think it's going to be – I think the clubs, I've talked about this before, but I think the clubs will probably do more of a kind of a pay-per-view kind of thing. I think they'll, if you're smart, because I think people are going to be like shelter shy, like the people are going to stay in even when things are better. Yeah. I'm not crazy I'm not going to go to, even when everybody's like, the vaccine, I'm not going to a Rolling Stones concert. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go somewhere where there's a sea of people for a long time until I really know everything is cool. Yeah. So I think for those people, you're going to have to facilitate. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like maybe they'll have like comedy clubs will stream in shows as they're happening. So let's say you sell 50 tickets and then you sell 50 online. So I think it'll be a combination. I would think you'd be smart. If I would open a club today, which may work on something, who knows? But if I open up something out here, it would have to be very high tech. Like I would want the streaming and all that stuff to be during the show. I think it'd be important. Professional cameras, and good audio. The Comedy Attic in Bloomington actually did it for a little while, but they didn't. It was very early, and they didn't have the setup, and it was wonky. But but it didn't cost much either. I got to see Stuart Huff with a mask on go through some of his new stuff, so that was good. Nice. So I'm asking you all these questions I don't ask anybody, but you seem like a guy who really likes music, and I'm a music guy myself. So what are you listening to right now that's really getting you? Do you listen to blues much? Gary Clark Jr. I love Gary Clark Jr. Yeah. I go all over the place. Have you heard of a band called All Them Witches? Sounds familiar. Yeah, they're like a Sabbath, Black Sabbath jam band, and I've been listening to them quite a bit. And I read Rob Halford's book, Confession, and so I'm going through my teen years and listening to a lot of Judas Priest. But I love bluesy, and I love good Americana stuff like John Hyatt, Dave Alvin, the Blasters, and stuff like that. Yeah, it was funny. When we were moving, my girl and I are just ridiculous. Like we were looking at all our boxes, and we basically paid $3,000 just to ship vinyl and VHS and DVDs. So we were like, really? We couldn't get rid of the VHS. I got rid of thousands of dollars worth of hats and clothes. I couldn't. Like we just you gotta have Ghostbusters 1 and 2 on VHS. To get rid of that. And so we kept so much stuff. And so I'm a big vinyl guy. Do my plug? I actually have a thing on Twitch on Comedy Hub, Dustin's Vinyl. And that's cool. And that's the thing I do on Wednesdays at 7 with Jeffrey Paul. And he's a big music guy. He worked in the music industry. Yeah. He's like a roadie in production and stuff. He's a comedian as well. And so, so I love finding new vinyl that I don't like. I love going to a record store and just, exploring and buying something and just seeing if it's good. I do that a lot. I'll type in, it's funny. I have a thing on Spotify. Like I'll type in like a word and just see what comes up. I'll put in like Dead and then see what band comes up. Or I'll put in Rose or whatever. And so, and I've actually find a lot of new music that way. Yeah. But I listen to all the classics and jazz, blues, and classic rock and all that. That's cool. I do the same thing. I know a guy that he's in a band and he's also got a record label where they do all this custom vinyl, and I really like what they're doing with their stuff. But he'll do the splatters, but he also does liquid filled. So he'll fill it with
different liquids, the band's favorite Gatorade or something like that. And then he does LED stuff. It's got a little remote, and you can make it like a strobe light and do all kinds of weird stuff. Yeah, it's pretty cool what he does. Yeah.
Nice. I've been getting into the Struts. Are you familiar with them?
Yeah, I know that name. Yeah.
Yeah, they're a fun band, especially like they just have an old school feel, but they're new, they're young, and they opened for Rolling Stones this last tour. And they just have that. They sound like Queen and Rolling Stones and Aerosmith. They have but it's nice for a young group to kind of have the guitar and the lead singer Hal and all that stuff. So it's nice. It's real. I think you'd really dig it. It has a cool sound.
Have you ever gotten to see Grace Potter?
No.
I got to see her twice, and two of the best shows I've ever seen in my life. She's nuts, man. It's when you listen to her stuff, it doesn't sound like hard rock, but when she goes on stage, she really turns it up.
What was your last concert?
Grace Potter. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was in D.C. It wasn't the 930 Club, but it was the new club that the 930 Club opened over by the wharf. I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, and I saw her at the 930 Club the first time, so it was neat to see him in those two different venues. And I saw Elvis Costello right before the pandemic, and that was a good show. You could tell he didn't want to be there. Yeah. At first, he was just like, fuck it, I'll do the song. But then he finally got into it after a while and acted like he wanted to be there, so it was neat.
That's funny. My last concert, I think it might have been Dwight Yoakam. I think in Manhattan.
That's a good one. Yeah,
he's people sit on Dwight. He's an amazing picker. Yeah, man. He's just such a good. And I love his voice, but he's a great guitarist.
Yeah.
He was great.
Yeah, he's excellent. Well, we could sit here and talk about music all day, but you've probably got stuff to do. I'm really glad.
More VHSs.
Yeah. I'm really glad we got to talk. So everybody check out this Right Club thing if you want to be a better comic, because this looks something I might check into. I really enjoy what you put out there, and the fact that you did that Zoom album, just really, I'm giving you mad props for doing that, because it's brave, and the fact that you made it good enough that they put it on XM, you did something there. So that's really good.
Thanks so much. Yeah, get the album, guys, and buy it. Stop being cheap.
Yeah, always buy it. You can listen to it first on Spotify. I always buy the album and I just have it in digital format, and then I listen on Spotify because it's easier. So
put me up with your vinyl guy, because I want to do a double, both my albums on vinyl.
What's his name? They did a comedy album a couple years ago. Yeah, I will. Yeah, I'll hook you up. Thanks for being on the show, Justin. It's been God damn it.
It's okay, Tony. You're good.
Okay. Thanks for being on the show, Dustin.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
Damn it.
Let's
get off stream here. So I'm not even drinking. Yeah.